right, we've already covered Act 1, Scene 1, and I know right now you guys are working on Act 1, Scene 2. And as we already talked about, right, the whole purpose of the first act is to lay out a brief introduction to all the characters and hint at least at what the conflicts are going to be. So in Act 1, Scene 1, we got the first set of conflicts. And Shakespeare actually does something a little bit differently with Midsummer Night's Dream. He splits up his conflicts into the first two acts. Act 1 focuses on the human element, and then in Act 2, he sort of shifts gears into the magical element, which we know is an important part of many of Shakespeare's comedies. You may have heard that one of Shakespeare's most famous techniques is what's called the idea of the play within a play. And it's pretty self-explanatory. Over the course of the play, the actors also decide to put on a play. He's used it in a lot of plays. Most famously, Shakespeare uses the idea of a play within a play in Hamlet, where he actually uses a play to try and reveal the murderous tendencies of his uncle, all that stuff. And of course, Midsummer Night's Dream. And the purpose, pretty self-explanatory, but it adds an extra layer to the story as a whole. The aspects of the play within a play are usually really ridiculous. They provide even more comic relief. And often the characters who are acting in this play within a play serve as a catalyst to drive the behavior of some of the more important characters that Shakespeare is focusing on. In Midsummer Night's Dream, there are three main classes of characters, and over the course of the play, switching scenes, switching acts, he migrates between these three main classes of characters, and they pretty much stick to themselves. There's some crossover, but the purpose is pretty focused. It's to set other things in motion or to add extra complications to the story. So the first class is what's known as the royals. It's the upper class, or the royalty. Specifically in Midsummer Night's Dream, they are the human characters who are royal, which is important when we get to our next category. The royals are pretty distinct. In addition to their titles, Shakespeare has the royals primarily speak in verse. Their speech tends to be more poetic, it tends to rhyme, there tends to be more imagery and that sort of thing. And of course, the royals consist of Theseus, Hippolyta, Aegeus, Demetrius, Lysander, Hermia, Helena, right, our four lovers. And then we throw in Philostrate because he is a human, and he is upper class because he is Theseus and Hippolyta's master of revels. He's the one that right, is designed to draw the Athenian youth into celebrating so that the time before Theseus and Hippolyta's wedding will go quickly. The second group is fairies. The fairies live in the forest. They possess magical powers. And the main fairies are Oberon and Titania, who are the king and queen of the fairies. And it's interesting that Shakespeare purposely sets them up to be sort of a counterpoint to Theseus and Hippolyta, both in their relationships and the way they control the people around them. There's the changeling boy, who is thrown in there. We don't really see him, but he's referenced as a main source of conflict for Theseus and, or excuse me, Oberon and Titania. We have Puck, who's also known as Robin Goodfellow. He's literally one of the most famous Shakespearean characters ever. We actually get the term puckish from him, which some of you may have heard of. He's Oberon's servant. He's the one that Oberon commands to take certain actions that drive most of the ridiculous parts of the play. And he just loves mischief in general, as we see in Act 2, Scene 1. And then we have Peas Blossom, Cobweb, Moth, and Mustard Seed, who are just lovely fairies whose entire job is to serve Titania.